let's talk about trans issues for a moment. I think it's important. I don't comment a lot on trans issues because I think I'm not the best person to speak on them. I think it's not that I'm necessarily ignorant. I just think there's other people in the space who are trans that are able to speak to these issues more. But today is Trans Visibility Day, so I do want to do a segment about trans issues. And specifically, I want to talk about one issue in particular that's been getting a lot of attention due to the success of a trans swimmer. So, Oklahoma is now the fourth state. There's now 4 states that have passed and enacted an anti-trans sports ban. I want to also highlight that there is only one trans public school athlete in the entirety of Oklahoma. Meaning this ban is literally picking on one kid. There is one kid in the entire state of Oklahoma that this law was designed to target. Could you imagine being that one kid who wanted to just play basketball with their friends? You're 15, 14, you wanted to play basketball with your friends, you wanted to socialize, and then they're like, hey, Jessica, we'll just say Jessica, we don't know their name. You are now banned from playing. Why? Well, a law was passed that bans you, and only you, from playing with your friends. Like, that's like, unbelievably insane. Unbelievably crazy, and unbelievably isolating to that one trans child. The thing is, I loved boxing. Okay, but first, before I get into it, I also want to say, and I want to talk about this because I have personal experience with this. So I'm on the board of an LGBTQ plus advocacy group in the state of Maryland. And we were involved, as well with other groups, in lobbying against a bill being passed. Specifically, a trans sports ban in Maryland. And we killed it. We killed it good. I mean, we didn't even let that thing get out of committee. And the voting committee was like 14-4. It got slaughtered in there. We Mitch McConnelled it. Grim Reaper. Graveyard. Buried alive. Good riddance, as I agree with chat. Stuff's dead, and I do want to highlight that I wasn't the most actively involved in this. Even though I were in meetings about it. I wanted to be more actively involved. But I did my best to like blast the content out to, you know, pressure politicians. But I'm very happy that ban is dead in my state. And if it ever gets proposed again, I will try to be even more involved next time in killing the bill. We will graveyard it every single time. It's not even worth proposing or recommending to a politician to propose. If you are a resident of Maryland and you are interested in any way of passing said legislation or proposing said legislation, if you're a state delegate, I know some state delegates watch my program, good luck. It's not going to happen. There is a cadre of political activists and politicians who are going to be in the way of it. We killed it so good, there's no point in even proposing it again. Let's read the article, and I can talk about exactly why the trans sports ban makes no sense when it comes to our public school system. Oklahoma Republican Kevin, we'll just call him Kev, Wednesday signed legislation banning transgender women and girls from competing on sports teams consistent with their gender at public schools, public charter schools, and public colleges in the state. Oklahoma and Arizona, which enacted its own law later Wednesday, joined 3 GOP-led states that have established similar bans this year. In pushing such measures, conservatives have argued that transgender women and girls have physical advantages over cisgender women in sports. Through a 2017 report that found no direct or consistent research, on any such advantage. When it comes to sports and athletics, girls should compete against girls, boys should compete against boys. Well, transgender girls are girls and transgender boys are boys, so I don't see the problem, but whatever. And let's be clear, that's all this bill says. said at the signing ceremony. The bill, however, will now prohibit some girls in the state from competing against other girls. Like other governors who enacted such bans, Stitt was surrounded by athletes around the state during the ceremony, with girls brandishing signs that read, "Save Women's Sports," and justifying the need for the law. The governor invoked the University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas, who has come to personify the debate around trans participation in sports. Okay. Opponents of the law immediately condemned Stitt. The American Civil Liberties Union of Oklahoma said he has sent a clear message to Oklahoma's vulnerable transgender youth that they are not welcome or accepted in our state. Ultimately, SB 2 violates the U.S. Constitution and federal civil rights law, puts Oklahoma at risk of losing federal funding, and harms transgender youth, all to solve a problem that does not exist. Okay, so I want to talk about this because the angle everyone's arguing about is terrible framing in a way, I think, by a lot of the people who oppose the legislation like myself. I feel like I'm gonna leave the arguing about the medical concepts and the science of this matter to the scientists and the medical professionals, to the research people. I'm gonna read it to the same people who wrote the 2017 report that found no direct or consistent research on any such advantage. I'm gonna leave it to them. I will excuse myself from that conversation at this moment. Now, let's talk about this from a different angle, and this is the angle that I sold or tried to sell people on when talking about the Maryland legislation. The primary purpose of sports in public schools is not to train the next generation of the world's best athletes. That is not the primary purpose. That was not the primary purpose of my time playing basketball. And you want to know what? At the end of the day, that was not the primary purpose, after all was said and done, of my time boxing. That's not what I gained out of it. What I gained out of my time boxing, especially, I loved boxing, was, and this would apply to all sports, I would assume, was camaraderie, socialization. I got a lot of life lessons when it comes to discipline and character building and stuff like that. But I also made a lot of friends and was able to form a small community with my fellow athletes. It was a great time in my life. I view it fondly, and I constantly try to find an opportunity to re-enter boxing. That's why the whole infrared thing was part of that I was excited to get back into it. And I only got to box for a year to a year and a half, and it was a very enjoyable time of my life. Sadly, work and school took over and I couldn't. And that is the purpose of sports in public schools, of basketball, of football, of soccer, of tennis, of all these things. The primary purpose from an educational standpoint of what the government should be involved in when it comes to public schooling is to keep kids healthy. That's the first one. And the second one is to allow kids to socialize with each other. That's another purpose of lunch, for example. Lunch isn't only about kids eating, but also allowing them to socialize so they can, develop socially and have friends and have a fun time. It's extremely important for all children. But not only is it extremely important for all children, but it's extremely important for trans and LGBTQ plus children especially, and this is the reason why. Study after study after study has shown that LGBTQ plus youth, and especially trans youth, face troubles socializing in school environments and have been targeted with bullying and harassment in school environments. And this leads to a higher rate of suicide. It leads to a higher rate of depression and a higher rate of mental illness and mental issues. All these things come into consideration. All the things that come together to produce that environment, complicated. And the ways to approach that is also complicated. How to deal with that issue. Anti-bullying programs, inclusion programs. But one of the most basic ways to deal with this is a simple principle, in my opinion, of just letting kids be kids. Just letting them play with each other. Just letting them have fun and make friends. If you're a little trans girl or a trans teenager and you just want to play basketball with your buddies to stay healthy and so you can make friends, laws like this are going to do nothing but isolate you and tell you you can't play with your friends because of who you are. That's a terrible message to send to people who are already dealing with higher rates of depression, suicidality, and a whole host of other issues. We're literally going in the opposite direction of what we should be doing to help reduce the suicidality of this community and help these people socially develop. They're isolated. They're bullied due to who they are, and they have trouble socializing due to that social stigma. And that social stigma they face can be alleviated in part through socialization through other people in the school. If you have a negative view of gay people, queer people, trans people, any type of people in the LGBTQ plus community, one of the best ways to remove that social stigma you have is to just interact with people in that community. Just being exposed to people of that community. Once you're shown that people of the community are fine, decent people who just like to have fun and just want to live a peaceful life and be left alone like everyone else, then usually people are like, oh, you're pretty chill. I guess what I've heard from Matt Walsh might not be true. Maybe what I've heard from so-and-so political commentator or so-and-so member of the community is inaccurate. And you're actually a lovely human being. In fact, I want to be friends with you. And those social ties and that socialization is not only important when it comes to dealing with, you know, this issue of depression and suicidality, but is also extremely important when it comes to, like, just developing socially. I know one of the big things that people like are concerned about when it comes to homeschooled kids, and this comes up all the time in the debate when it comes to homeschooled children, is the idea that these children do not get proper socialization, that these are the quote-unquote weird kids. Now, what people won't tell you is the vast majority of people who are homeschooling their kids do allow them to actually play and interact with other kids that are homeschooled. They're just other kids in the community after school is over, and they'll find other ways for them to socialize, either through local youth groups that have sports and stuff like that. But that socialization is extremely important, and everyone knows that, from homeschooled children to children in public educational institutions to private schools to any type of school. It's extremely important. I can tell you, and I don't talk about it like a lot because, you know, it's not a fun time to talk about. But when I made an attempt on my own life, and it happened twice, it was during periods of life where I felt my loneliest. Like, I didn't, even if I knew a lot of people, I didn't have anybody to talk to, really. I didn't have anybody, and I didn't want to either. But that's a separate issue. But what really helped me after my other attempt, the attempt that was more recent, was having a friend to go to and spend time with afterwards. And that connection of friend groups really helped reel me in and allow me to land back on my feet and now be involved in some of the best work I've ever been involved in, both locally and through activism and online from what you guys have seen. And so having that connection of friend groups is extremely important for one's mental health. And all I want for these trans kids and all queer kids is to be able to develop those friends groups like everybody else. Everybody deserves to have a friend. I mean, come on. I feel like a children's show right now. Everyone needs a friend. Like, I mean, come on. And for a lot of people, sports was a way to make those connections. Hell, I became so close with my boxing coach, for instance. He actually ended up coming to my graduation party. Wonderful guy. His name was Randy. Wonderful guy. Even if we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues. Not to mention, America has an obesity crisis, and I want as many kids burning fat as possible. And the more kids we ban from being able to burn that fat, the worse off for everybody is going to be. Definitely if we ever want any form of universal health care, or really just to remove some of the strain on our healthcare system, especially during a pandemic, mind you. But that's a totally different angle. One that I think it doesn't have as strong of a sell. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about this issue because I haven't made a segment on this in today's Trans Visibility Day. And so I think that the angle that everybody's talking about is just the scientific debate, but nobody's talking about the impact it's actually going to have on the mental health of trans students. Not to mention, on top of everything, these laws, the debates around these laws lead to further social stigmatization in these school environments. Like, people talk, even if you're not on the sports team, people in school are going to be talking about what's going on politically. When there was like police shootings, like, that dialogue trickled down into the educational system, trickled down into classrooms and lunchroom tables. It did, whether you like it or not. You can't protect your children from the world, right? The world's gonna come and hit them at some point, whether if you like it or not. You can put as many parental controls on a TV you want. Kids are gonna find out either through a billboard or a TV in a store or their phone or through just word of mouth, newspapers. Somehow they're gonna find out. And people are going to see this debate going on. They're going to see the debate about Leah Thomas. They're going to see the debate about maybe one of their classmates who are playing with sports. And let's say you're a trans kid, not even trying to play sports. You're trying to just keep your head down, get through the school system. That debate is going to drag into the classroom. And quotes like, "We just want boys playing with boys," like the governor of Oklahoma said, is going to trickle down there as well. And that dialogue is toxic. Doesn't feel good. It furthers the social stigmatization that trans people face and furthers the difficulties they will be facing in the classroom. So even if you're not directly involved in sports as a trans person, the social stigmatization that comes with this will still affect you. Anyway, that's my stance on trans sports bills, and I encourage every one of my followers to be sure to message their legislators. And I'm not talking Congress people, by the way. You can if you want to. The real fight over trans sports is happening at the state level. 4 states have passed a ban. Other states are trying to. What these states are doing, what these Republican activists, and let's be real, it's the Republicans pushing this, is they're copying the models of other states. They look at one ban that passes, and then everybody basically completely copies that law, copy and paste, and just changes a few words and tries to pass it in their own state. That's what's happening right now in states all across the country, including mine. We had to go out and kill it. And so what I would advocate for you to do at home, if you're watching this, if you want to get involved, because I always advocate for my community to get directly involved, is message your state delegate. Ask what their stance on the issue is and make your thoughts known. Both of them. Sometimes you'll have more than one state delegate. For me, I have Mary Lehman, I have Pena Melaniak, and I have Ben Barnes. All of them I have a cordial relationship with. And you have probably a state senator. Mine is Jim Rosabep, who used to be the former ambassador to Romania. He wrote a book called Dracula's Dead. I recommend it highly. It's about the fall of Romanian communism and the fallout afterwards. It's a very good book. I got a free copy. But you'd have to buy it. I'm very sorry. Can't get you guys free copies too. Message them. Check on the legislation in your state. See if it's in committee. See if it's being voted. See if it's been voted down. Maybe next session it'll come back again. Keep your eye on it. Get involved. Really. You can get involved. If you ever wanted a reason to get involved, I've just served you one. If you ever needed a jumping off point, here's your jumping off point. There's also probably LGBTQ plus organizations in the state that you can organize with on this issue. Ask around. Anyway, there's my commentary on transports. Oh, also, one last thing. I don't know if you guys saw this, but everything I said equally applies to the trans bathroom ban. This has to do with a trans person being in a bathroom. I do want to bring up the fact that there's been no data ever presented anywhere that trans people being allowed to go into bathrooms that align with their gender increases like rates of rape or sexual assault or anything like that. There's no data out there because it's just not true that happens. It's just a fear-mongering tactic. It's a revamp of the old idea that the gays are coming for your kids. They're gonna molest them or something like that. It's a revamp of that. And I wanted to read this post because I found this kind of funny because of just how doomer this person was. All that happened here, to be clear, is that a trans person went into a bathroom. In fact, let's see if I can play like some scary music while we read this post. It finally happened. My first encounter. Regular day out. Went shopping and then ate at McDonald's. Went to the toilet. There was a trans woman. made brief eye contact, as it was a small toilet with 3 cubicles. I was minding my own business, and I was internally debating if I should say anything or leave. They went into the end cubicle, and I went into the opposite end one. Minutes passed. Honestly, felt like forever. I hear a flush, the latch, and the door noise. A few seconds later, the water running at the sink. I'm looking up and down the gaps in my cubicle, looking for shadows or anything really. The water stops. The hand dryer starts whirring like a tornado! It's a hand dryer! 30 seconds pass and it stops. The main door thuds shut and it's silent. The silence was loud. I get out and look around, wash my hands and leave. So it happened to me. Kept calm. Got through it. What a loser. I'm sorry, like, all you did was describe a perfectly average encounter with another human being where nothing exciting happened whatsoever. I've had a million of these interactions in bathrooms before, and I could not describe the finer details of any single one of them, because I was not paying attention at all, because I had to, go to the bathroom, like this trans woman did. Do you think they remember who you are? Do you think they remember any of this interaction? No, because you're just a weird lady looking through the gaps of... looking through the gaps of the bathroom stall while they're just trying to use the bathroom and wash their hands. My goodness. Dude, anti-trans people are literally this deranged, but this is indistinguishable from parody. It is. I think there's like a 10% chance this is a parody post, but I don't know for sure. Dude, the title is crazy. It finally happened, my first encounter. This sounds like what somebody would post about my first encounter, and then they would talk about their first time with battle, fighting Russian troops in Ukraine. Not just a person using the bathroom. Some of the most deranged people I've ever met are anti-trans activists. They're really, some of them are really deranged.